Welcome back to another episode of the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast, the place where poetry meets conversation. I'm your host, Terrence P. Elmore, and before we get into today's topic, make sure you hit that plus sign so you don't miss an episode. Also, please subscribe to my blog, thebrownssugarcafe.blog, and if you find any value in this episode or any other episodes, make sure you leave a heartfelt review. So with that being said, let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope that you all are doing well. I really hope that you all are taking time for some self-care. I hope that you all are enjoying the beautiful weather in spite of the pollen. That's been a horrible thing, but aside from that, it's been really nice outside. But we got these episodes rolling. We're almost at the end of the season, but I could not let this season close without talking to our next guest. He's been on the podcast before. He's a friend of the show, and we're talking about his brand new book, his debut book. So without further ado, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, and thank you for having me. My name is Raphael James. I am a local newscaster in Charleston, South Carolina, WCSC TV, known as Live 5 News. And now I can say that I'm an author as well. I have penned my memoir entitled I Don't Want to Talk About It, a journalist's essays on autism, dementia, religion, and God. And I just want to say right now, thank you for all of the help that you gave me as I realized that this is something I wanted to do. You having published several books, you were a great resource for me, and I appreciate that. I really
Oh,
do.
thank you. Yeah, I get excited anytime someone tells me that they want to publish a book or they're about to publish a book. So I'm glad you published a book because when you were last on here, we were kind of talking about it. You mentioned it like, maybe there'll be a book coming. And I looked at my calendar and it was a year ago since
Oh,
you were on
wow.
the show. And a lot has changed in a year. Your book is out. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank
The
you.
title really grabbed me because the last time you were on here, we talked about talking to your people. And then
That's right.
your book title is I Don't Want to Talk About It. So please tell me the idea behind the title.
Believe it or not, those two tie into each other. I remember the last time I was on and we were talking about talking to your people and how important that was. And the reason that was important is because for so long, families kept secrets. For so
Mm.
long, we didn't talk about those things that we didn't want to talk about. We kept those feelings and emotions bottled up inside, which is exactly what I was doing with some things and some feelings and emotions. I was keeping them in, even though I have a beautiful and adoring wife who I could talk to. I had parents, pastors, friends that I could reach out to, and I did on occasion. But there were some things that I just didn't really want to talk about. The title is true. I just don't want to talk about it. And my wife noticed a change in me as my father's health began to take a decline. He was diagnosed with dementia and his health began to worsen. And my son, who is diagnosed on the autism spectrum disorder, his behaviors kind of increased. So it was coming at me from all sides on top of dealing with other things. And there wasn't really anybody I just felt comfortable opening up to and just sharing all of what was on my heart. So she said, look, if you don't talk to anybody else, just write. Just write it down in a journal. But it's going to help you if you get it out. So after I did that a few times, I took her up on it. I just started writing, just angry writing. And the first few pieces that you see in the book are just that, me putting it out on the paper, stream of consciousness writing. Whatever I felt, that's what I said. That's what I wrote down on the paper. And I'd write it and put it down, put it away. And I'd come back to it later. And as I reread some of it, I was like, oh, wow, I knew I was having these feelings, but this is kind of profound. And I began to work myself through some of the things that I was dealing with just by going back and rereading what I had written on the topic. At no point did I ever expect this to be published. It's just me working through it and getting it out. But the longer it went, the further I kept doing it. This is a 5 year period. So the last time we talked, I've been working on doing this, writing things out, journaling for about 4 years. And somewhere along the way, I got the thought, this is helping you. It would be a shame for you not to share it and help others. So that's how we got here.
When you sent me the sample chapters and you said that it was a bit raw, I'm thinking maybe it needs some edits, that type of raw. But when I read it, I was like, oh, this is the raw he's talking about. It's very filled with emotions, but they're real emotions. When I was reading it, I found myself relating to a lot of it because, like you said, you have your wife, you can talk to her, you have parents, you can talk to them, but it's sometimes it's certain things you don't want to talk about. You
Right,
just don't want to do it. Even though you know in your core that you probably should, but I think it's just a thing that we do as men. It's like, we have to compartmentalize certain things so we can be the hero, so we can be the champion. And it's just like, you get to that point where you have to talk about it, or in your case, write it out. That's what I found really helps me is writing. Like,
hmm
if it's just freestyle writing, or, I trying to get back into journaling, but that just really helps me. And so to see you get your emotions out on paper and then share them in this book, first of all, congratulations on just the bravery in sharing this, because this is very intimate.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. A couple things that you said, getting it out, and you're an excellent writer, so I can see how that would be cathartic for you to write certain things and get that out there. The poetry and the way that you have with words, that's amazing. Even for people, I was talking to somebody today and they said I'm not much of a writer. Well, sometimes it doesn't have to be. You're not going at it like an artist with a paintbrush. Sometimes it's just throwing paint on the canvas and stepping back and taking a look at what it looks like, getting it out, getting that anger out, getting that frustration out, just talking it out. And once it's out, then you can take a look at it. And then you can point to it and say, "Oh, that was bothering me. I didn't realize that was bothering me as much as it was, but I guess it is." So now that I see it, now I can deal with it. And that's really the thing that I want to impress upon people, especially men. Like you said, we do compartmentalize some things. We do have those things that we don't talk about. And even if you're just talking to yourself by writing things out on paper, I think that goes a long way towards your healing.
One of the things you pointed out is something that I don't think I've done that often. You said you go back to what you wrote and you read it.
Mhm.
Just hearing you say that, I'm thinking like maybe I should go back through some of those things and read over them, because a lot of times I just get it out, close it, and forget it.
It hits different. When you write it with the emotion that you write it, it means one thing. But after maybe the crisis has passed, or you have a different headspace and you go back and read it, it hits a little different. It's almost like going back, and if you've made some strides, then it's looking at growth.
Mm.
This is how I felt then, and this is how I feel now. So you can see whether you have grown, or maybe in some cases not grown, but you can see it. It's data.
Yeah,
Now you can take it and do something with it.
because I remember a while back I found some old poetry, and it was nothing like the stuff I put out now. Some of it was, I don't know what kind of space I was in, but some of it was very almost borderline angry. And I
Hmm.
read through those and I was like, man, what type of headspace was I in? But, I was like, for these words, they flow together pretty good. So I'm just
Right.
like, after hearing you say that, I'm thinking like it is about growth, like where you were before. And if we're not, taking stock of what we've written or what we've done, then how do we gauge how we are with our healing?
Absolutely.
One thing I noticed, because we were talking about, well, you mentioned earlier about poetry, but how you started off the introduction, that was brilliant. The metaphor you used, what was the idea behind that? Was the introduction part of what you were writing, or did you come up with that after you finished the book?
No, that was one of, like I said, one of the earliest pieces that I wrote, and it was just it. You said you'd written some pretty heavy stuff before. I wasn't suicidal. I wasn't suicidal, but there was a part of me that was like, if I died right now, okay, whatever. I'm not gonna do it, but if it happens, it happens. So at that moment, I was just trying to, I guess, convey what it felt like,
Yeah.
trying to describe it. If I, this is what I feel like doing, but I know I'm not going to do that. But let me put all the words out there, say it how I feel it, and then come back and take a look at it. And when I did, I thought, man, um, I didn't know that was in there like that. What were your thoughts when you read it?
Exactly what you were saying. I'm like, I know this isn't suicidal, but it grabbed me. So I'm like, I know something is coming as I read more and more. I don't want to ruin it for anybody who's about to read it, but the
Mhm.
way you spun it, I was like, oh, and I like how you had some of the words crossed out and then replaced with other words. And it made perfect sense for this book. You set the tone for the book. You brought us into what we're about to embark on. I mean, you have several different parts in here, and I don't want to like I really want to dive into the whole book, but I don't want to give it away.
Oh,
So I
we can
guess
talk about whatever
yeah.
you want to talk about.
So the inner child,
Hmm.
that essay. I was reading that and I could relate to that as far as just seeing things from a child's perspective and then becoming an adult and just questioning, were the things that you grew up thinking and feeling, were they real? Were they true? And then that part in it where you said, you don't want to feel this way either. Where were
Right.
you in that moment when you wrote that piece?
Most of these were written between 1 and 5 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't able to sleep, so I would get up and sit up, and since I had the notepad or whatever, I'd take it out and try to write. Maybe I can let some of these thoughts out so I can go to sleep. Um, and that one, you know how you can know there's something you want to talk about or you need to get out, but I couldn't bring myself to just say it
Yeah.
just like that. So I'm a storyteller. So I said, well, if I write a story, maybe I can get it out that way. Same with the introduction. So, it's like there's a kid in me that has been stifled for
Mm.
40 years because I don't go back. I don't give him a chance to speak through me. What he went through when he went through it, that's fine. And I'm not going to keep bringing up hurtful memories. But through that exercise, I found out if you don't give that kid a chance to talk, if you don't afford that kid, that little Raphael in you, an opportunity to speak, you're not going to be able to heal from it. So I knew there were some things that I needed to deal with, I needed to talk about. And they weren't necessarily thoughts that I had as a 50 some odd year old man. They were things that the little boy in me was trying to deal with, trying to grapple with. And I just started writing. I started writing from his perspective. And then it hit me, well, what would you say to him? So that's what I said. And it was just such an effective tool, an
Yeah.
effective method to draw out of me what I was feeling. And that's another one that when I went back and read it, I was like, man, I didn't know. Sometimes you can sit and write a story and say, okay, I want to start here and I want to end up here. None of that. It's like, okay, I'm just going to start, and where
Right.
we end up is where we end up. And that was the beauty of it all.
Your book is a journalist's essay on autism, dementia, religion, and God. We've touched on these things so far. These are things that were happening in your life. If you could dive into each part and kind of give
Okay.
us a little bit of how these things tied into the book.
Because these were the four things that I didn't want to talk about. I did not want to talk about the most challenging parts of having a son who's on the autism spectrum. And I don't want anybody to take that the wrong way. I love my son. He's a fabulous individual, a wonderful human being. There are some things, some challenges that he has that are very difficult for the family to deal with sometimes. And there are things he can't control. And so he can't control it. I can't control him. And so we get to a point of what are we going to do? So the things people see when we're out, that's one thing. What happens here at the house, that's not something I want to display. That's not something I want people to see. I don't even want to see it. I don't even want to deal with it. So the last thing I wanted to do was talk about it. But I know that there are other families who are going through similar things than ours.
Yes.
I know there are other families who are dealing with things that are probably even beyond what my wife and my family and I deal with. One video that just crushes my soul. I don't know if you remember it on social media. A lady had a cell phone and she was going through her house crying, and everywhere the camera touched was a room that had been destroyed by a young
Yeah,
man.
I remember that.
I mean, deep destruction, televisions broken,
Yeah.
sinks and porcelain, uh, toilets cracked. The house was destroyed. And it was because the kid, she said no. She wouldn't let him have a tablet or something like that. And I think people watched that and watched it for laughs and watched it for just, but that's not funny. That's my life now. It hasn't gotten that bad, but that's my life. That's a lot of people's lives. Um, when you deal with the rage that won't subside and at times puts you and others in your family in danger or in harm's way. That's not what I want to talk about. So that's that part of it is one I didn't want to talk about. The dementia. We don't talk about in our community. I think we're getting better, but
Yeah.
overall, we don't talk about people who have Alzheimer's and dementia. It's not something we want to talk about. And I mentioned in the book, it was like when I was growing up, I'd heard of it, but that was like people went crazy. You don't want to talk about your family members who went crazy. So, it was just kind of, I'll avoid talking about it as long as I can. And so to have those diagnoses, autism, dementia, and then religion, I turn to religion. We turn to our faith when we have challenges. And I was not getting the answers I thought I should be getting. by turning to religion. And there are portions in there actually when one of my family members went up for prayer. Not only did they not get the prayer that they were hoping to get, it was denied, and that was a whole other thing. So autism, dementia, religion. So now who do I turn to? God. God, I thought you were the God of love, the biggest thing in the universe, the creator of the universe. If anybody can help me, God, it's you. And I've been crying, I've been pleading, I've been begging for you to change these situations, because the Bible says if I do this, this, and this, then it'll change. If I speak to the mountain, it'll be thrown into the sea. If I have this faith the size of a mustard seed, and I'm like, hey, God, this isn't happening. Where are you? And it was just like I couldn't get any satisfaction. So coming up in religion, coming up loving and adoring God as a child,
Yeah.
this wasn't where I wanted to be. If you're getting to the point where you're questioning the authority on everything good in the universe, where do you have to go after that? If God's not going to work for you, what do you have
Yeah.
left? And so it, I feel like I'm talking too much, but
No, you're
all of
not.
those emotions
Yeah.
came together to get me to some, I think, very precious points in the book where God himself actually does address some of the things, some of the questions that I had. And that was one of the most mind-blowing experiences that I've ever had in my life.
So, what was the moment that you went from just writing these things in the journal to feeling comfortable with turning into a book to share with everybody?
I again, the title is not just me trying to be clever. It is 100% truth. I did not want to talk about it. I did not want to share these thoughts with anybody, but I would read them, and sometimes I would share, a piece of what I'd written with my wife, and she would say, "This is really, really good." And I felt within me that, yeah, I think this will help somebody, but I still don't want to do it. So I'll just continue to write, and maybe one day, who knows, maybe it will be a book. So I haven't shared this story with anybody. I'll share it with you. I um I was in that space where, yeah, this may be a book. Somebody may appreciate it, but I'll get to it when I get to it. So I went to sleep one night and I had a dream. In this dream, I was with one of my friends, one of my dear friends' child. He's about a year old. And we were just hanging out. I was taking him to different places and uh, ice cream or whatever. And we were just hanging out. So there's a time transition in the dream, and we're riding around in a two-seater. So it's me and the kid in the car seat right here. There's no back seat. I don't have a car like that, but for the dream, that's what it was. So dream flashes to another place. I see myself in a stadium. It's like a soccer stadium, huge, thousands and thousands of people, and everybody's screaming. And I don't even like soccer like that, but it was just a huge stadium.
Yeah.
So after the match was over, everybody's going back out to the car, and I walk to the car and I look and see the two-seater car, and I feel ill. I feel distress because I'm like, wait a minute. I was just in there and this kid is still in the car. I've been in this game for hours doing everything I wanted to do. And this baby, this precious gift is strapped in the car. So I ran to check check the child, open the car, and he's screaming, crying. I said, "Oh my God, are you hungry?" He said, "Yes." And the panic, the fright, if you can just imagine that somebody has entrusted their child with you
Yeah.
and you have been so neglectful that when you come back, that could have been a very awful scene. So when I woke up in a sweat, I felt this. It was palpable. I'm like, man, if this was real, my whole life would have been ruined. So after I sat with it for a little while, the interpretation came to me that, look, you have been given a gift.
Mm.
You may not see it as precious. You may feel like it's just yours. You may feel like it's just something you can pick up and put down, but that's not the case. I have given you something that's special. I have given you something that I cherish, speaking as God to me. And you have an obligation to do this. And I said, I never want to feel that way again. So from that point on, every chance I got, I was trying to push this thing out to the, because, you know, I never want to have to experience you had something so precious and you neglected it because you wanted to do what you wanted to do. So long story, but this first time I'm sharing that
Wow.
publicly with anybody.
That'll do it. That'll do it. I mean, I'm a vivid person when I hear stories, I can picture it. And so I'm just putting that in my mind, like that experience and your interpretation. That's what I was thinking when you were telling me the story. Like you have this precious gift that you're neglecting. I always talk about this, how I believe that the things we go through, they're lessons that we learn from them. And of course, they happen to us, but they're for other people. There
Hmm.
are people out there who are hopeless. There are people out there who maybe want to give up. And to hear something from us and to know that at least one person out there is going through something
Yeah.
and I'm not alone, that speaks volumes. It saves lives. And it's difficult to be vulnerable and share, because like I said, this book is very intimate, it's very deep, to share this with the world. And it takes a
Yeah.
lot of courage, but at the same time, you always have to remember that if you don't share things with certain things, or if you know you're supposed to be doing something, you're essentially missing out on the opportunity to save somebody's life.
Right.
And
Right.
I know it sounds extreme, but you have to look at it like that. Like our gifts and, our purpose and the things that we do are to help others. And that dream, it's very realistic. Like you said, if that happened in real life, you would be ruined.
I
And
felt
so
it.
you take it in context of what happens if you don't share this with the world. Who's missing out? Who's missing out on the opportunity to heal? And I'm pretty sure during this writing process, there were a lot of things that you faced that you probably didn't think about for years. I'm sure there was some growth there and some healing that you didn't think would happen that happened.
Absolutely. Lots of tears, lots of snot, lots of all of that stuff coming out.
I love the cover. What was the idea behind the cover?
Well, this cover was the picture of me there. I was emceeing a event with Miss Deborah Anderson, and the photographer Francis Graddick. He snapped that picture and he sent it to me, and I looked at that picture and I said, "This is the image." I can't have a picture of me smiling on the cover because that would not be the tone that I wanted to set. But this picture set the tone, and then there behind me is my father, me, and my son. And you see my hands around my son.
Yeah.
That's because he wanted to run off. So I'm trying to hold him for the picture with my
Yeah.
dad that my wife took. And she actually wrote, she has a chapter in here about some of the photos that she's taken. And she wrote um, her thoughts on that picture, three generations of men
Yeah.
and me in the middle of a mental health crisis there between them. Or so it was that's what was behind the cover.
That's a very beautiful cover, man. I like the three generations of James men sitting there, and yeah, you're right. This picture, you're not smiling at all. You look like you don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. So I've been blessed. The there's an imposter syndrome. There's a thing that people have once you put something out there, and it can turn into anxiety. Had I not had that dream that I just told you about, I think I probably would have second guessed myself so many times. Nobody wants to hear about this. You don't have to get this detailed and this deep. Why are you exposing this when nobody in the world was asking you for it? But that dream hit me, and it's like somebody out there needs this. And my wife, Serena, said, if your book does nothing else, it helps people feel seen, it helps them feel less alone. And you know what? If that's what it is, I'll take that. If it helps one person, my job is done. So I feel like it was my calling, and it's out there now, and I hope somebody gets helped by it. And if
Yeah.
nothing else, I hope it inspires other people to write. Just get it out. Find a way to let what's inside of you out.
It's encouraging in that way as well. Just seeing somebody pour out their emotions and just let it all out on paper. And there are things in this book that people can relate to, maybe not exactly, but they've had some obstacles and different things in their life, some challenges, sometimes where maybe, they're like you said, God, are you really there?
Mhm.
I'm a faithful servant. I pray all the time, worship and all of that. And it seems like you're not there. And it's something that people face. But
Mhm.
what I find so profound is even in the midst of this in writing, it's like his voice was heard. Where was that moment where, writing all of this, that you felt his voice?
It gave me chills, man. I didn't set out to really like there's a letter. I wrote a letter to God, trust issues, um, and God through me wrote a letter back in regards to, and I thought I had laid out this really uh, uh, great retort, or God, where are you? How could you allow this to happen? I thought I had really set myself up uh, to make my case to God. How can you ask me to trust you when you don't even have the courtesy to honor my belief? I believe in you. Isn't that enough? And I sat down, and the words just started coming, and in regards to his letter back to me. And man, when I finished writing that one, and I don't even know if I can say writing that. I physically wrote it, but I felt like it was a download, if you will.
Yeah.
It was just a really spiritual, surreal moment. When I sat back and read that, I'm like, oh my God, you really just spoke to me. And it happened a few other times, and I write about it in the book as well. But this was in interactions with my son. I heard God talking to me, and he was using my voice to talk to me as I was talking to my son. I'm telling my son, hey, I forgive you, man. Of course, you're good. And God said, yeah, now I'm talking to you. What you just said to your son, I'm saying to you. And it just really, it floored me. It
Wow.
floored me.
I'm very proud of you for doing this because and I've talked about this with guests before. We see you as Raphael James, award-winning journalist, and sometimes when we see certain people doing certain things in the public figure, it could kind of be easy to think that, you're superhuman. You don't go through things that everybody else goes through. And to see something like this, it's a reminder that we all have different things that we're going through. We all have different challenges. And, it's not the challenges that define us, but it's how we handle those challenges that
Right.
define us. And like I said before, just knowing that if somebody's going through something, that they're not alone, that somebody else experiences that you experienced different things and you wrote about it and shared it. Like, I know this book has already helped a lot of people. I know it's going to continue to help a lot of people because right now a lot of people are hurting with different things going on. We're not to get political, but it's a lot of things happening in the world where a lot of people are feeling like hopeless and feeling like they're alone. And this book is something that I think anybody can relate to. Like I said before, that there's something in here for everybody. And I just want to thank you for just being obedient and publishing this book. When writing this book, were
Thank
there
you for
any
that, brother.
challenges that you might have experienced?
After the point that, I had this dream and I realized this isn't just a passing whim. This isn't just something you thought about. Maybe you should do it. No, this is a mandate from God. And I'm not trying to be all super serious and deep, but that's what it was.
Yeah.
So, no, you've got to do this. Once I accepted that and started moving towards it, I'm like, because before, it was, well, I don't have the money to publish it, or I don't know how to do it. It was always something I
Yeah.
couldn't do. But when I made the first step, just to write it, just to finish it, just to take it from a document form and upload it into the computer, or type out my longhand and put it in the computer, things just started falling into place. And that was another confirmation that this isn't just you, dude. This is God. Everywhere I turned, a way was made. I don't have the money for something. Friend called, hey man, I just want to bless you with something. I don't know what you got going on, but hey, this is for that. So that became the money I needed to do what I needed to do for the book. And every single time I got to a point, the cover, a way was made. um, Getting it published. Okay, I've never self-published a book. I've read about it, but I don't know how to do it. Somebody would come into my space and tell me what I needed to do. I could reach out to you. You were there to help guide me along. Every single step along the way, there were no red lights, because all I needed was a half of a red light. All I needed was
Yep.
to talk myself out of it, was, something, well, see, I knew this wasn't meant to be
Yep.
because this isn't going right. Everything, all green lights, so much so that it was scary all the way through publishing. And I think I wouldn't even call them red lights, maybe caution lights now, is I don't necessarily know all of the ins and outs of marketing and pushing it out there, but I'm taking it from the aspect of God got me this far. I'm just going to let him do with it whatever he's going to do with it, because none of it was me. So I'm just going to get out of the way. I feel like I've done my part. God is out here.
Yeah.
I done what you told me to do. So the rest is on you.
What advice would you have for somebody who wants to publish their first book and don't know if they should? They maybe think that nobody cares. What advice would you give to somebody now that you have stepped into author and you've gotten out of your own way? What advice would you give to somebody?
Well, I think if you want to go the self-publishing a route, There are a number of videos on YouTube you can look up. There are a number of books that you can buy that will kind of walk you through. I researched a lot of that stuff before I got started. If that's something you want to do, you feel driven to do it, there's nothing really that can stop you from doing it. Um, there were times where I said, well, I don't have the money to pay for an editor. Just write the book, man. Somebody will come along. If it's supposed to be published, if it's supposed to be that, that will come. But if you talk yourself out of taking the first step, it's not going to happen. So if that's something you want to do, if you want to publish a book, start. The first step is to start and see where it goes from there. And even if you don't necessarily want to have it published, it's so, and I'm trying to be careful how I use this term, it's so easy now. It's so doable. It's so accessible to publish your own book that you could. And with print on demand, you could print 10 copies and be done with it. It's not like you have to print 1,000 copies at a time and go out and sell them door to door. You can have your work in print now. And there are several people in the area. There are several publishers in the area that can show you how to do that.
You made me think about something that Dr. Miles Monroe said. When he was talking about writing a book, he was like, you don't have to be a scholar, you don't have to know big words. He was like, just write it out and find somebody else to do the editing and the
Yeah,
proofreading, and just get it out.
that's right.
And that's just
That's
one
right.
of the things that when it comes to writing, I find myself, it's like when I have a particular subject that I want to write about, and if I'm toying with it, I'm going nowhere. But when I sit down and just start writing, it just happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm proud of this work. Somebody else may look at it with a critical eye and say, you can point out things that are wrong with it. I'm not a professional, and I did the best I could. But I think the content, I think you're going to be able to gain something from it. And the mistakes, as I come across the mistakes, I can fix those. I can re-upload it. And hey, so the more critiques, the more feedback, the better I can make it. So please, I have thick skin. And like I said, be honest with me. Let me know what you think. And I do appreciate you for always providing that feedback for me.
Oh, of course, of course. What's one thing in particular, maybe that you want to share about your book before I let you get out of here? Something for somebody who might be interested in reading your book, but may not think it's for them.
One of the things I read when I was trying to decide if this author path was for me, it was, you need to have a defined audience, a clearly defined audience. And I didn't, per se. You need to focus on one subject. Well, I didn't, and that bothered me. I'm like, this is what my book is. This is what I'm talking about, but it's not limited to one person. It's not for parents. It is for parents, but it's not solely for parents. So I'm going to run down who this book is for. It's for parents, children of aging parents. It's for parents with children with special needs. It is for caregivers of all types. It is for those who have kind of had it with religion, or who haven't had very good experiences with religion. It's for people who are looking for the answers in religion and don't always find them. And I'm not saying the answers aren't there, but it's for people who are having problems finding the answers. And then there are for people who have ever questioned God. It's for people who have ever said, hey, if you are supposed to be this, that, and the other, why am I still going through this? And I think this is the catch-all. It is for people who feel like they have done everything that they can do, and they don't know what else to do. And that answer is the gift that my father gave me. Trust God anyway.
Tell the people how they can purchase your book, the author events you have coming up, and if you have any, I don't think you have anything else to say after that. But if you have anything else to say,
Terrence, I appreciate every opportunity I have to be on the Brown Sugar podcast. I really dig what you're doing. I appreciate your voice and your platform. So thank you for sharing it with me. The book is available. I don't want to talk about it. A journalist's essays on autism, dementia, religion, and God. It's available online anywhere books are sold. That means you can find it on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, wherever. You should be able to put it in and find it. Put my name in, it should come up. You can buy it from me directly online at a website called books.by/Raphael-James. And with that bookstore, that online bookstore, I, the author, retain more of the royalties, more of the sales than I would on some of those other platforms. So I know some people are hardwired to want to get their books from Amazon, and I get that. It's available in ebook on Amazon, and I'm working on an audiobook as we speak. So that should be coming out a little later on. But if any of those platforms will get the book to you, and I'll have some book signings. I'll be at the Mount Pleasant Barnes and Noble on the 19th of April, and I think that's going to be like from 2 to 4 p.m. And I've got some dates at the public library. April 12th, I will be at the Keith Summey branch. That's in North Charleston. Then I think we go to, here we go, Wednesday, April 16th at 6 o'clock. I'll be at the Bees Ferry, West Ashley branch. The Keith Summey date, that's at 3 o'clock on April 12th. Wednesday, April 23rd, I'll be at the main library, downtown Charleston, Calhoun Street. And then Saturday, April 26th at noon, I'll be at the Wando Mount Pleasant branch. And April 19th, I'll be at the Barnes & Noble in Mount Pleasant.
okay, everybody, please go purchase this book for yourself, for a friend, family member. If you're in the area, please go to one of the book signings, but do whatever you can to support. Mr. James, I want to thank you again for being my guest. Thank you for this book. Thank you for sharing this with the world. Thank you for sharing your time with me and my listeners. And as always, remember, keep pushing forward.
Appreciate you, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Terrence P. Elmore, and this is the place where poetry meets conversation. Hit that follow button and turn on your notifications so you won't miss an episode. Check out my blog, thebrownsugarcafe.blog. Also connect with me on Instagram at thebrownsugarcafe. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, remember, keep pushing forward.